Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest.
Glen Lynch, CEO of Volatus Aerospace, ticker symbol TAKOF. Volatus Aerospace is a leader in innovative global aerial solutions for intelligence and cargo. With deep technological and subject matter expertise and over 100 years worth of combined institutional knowledge in aviation, Volatus provides meaningful aerial solutions for end users across various industries using both piloted and remotely piloted aircraft systems, RPAS or drones. They are committed to enhancing operational efficiency, safety, and sustainability through innovative real-world aerial solutions. This is an impact company, and I'm going to let Glen tell you more about that in just a moment.
This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey, everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with a long overdue interview. And probably one of the reasons that happens is because Glen and I get to talking. And, well, it's Sunday. We started this at 8. It's now 10 a.m. And my friend, look, Glen, I love talking to you, man. You're one of my favorite CEOs. We have a very interesting conversation every time. Glen Lynch from Volatus Aerospace, ticker symbol TAKOF, takeoff. Glen, thanks for coming in on a Sunday to give us an update of what's happening on Volatus.
It's my pleasure, Tim. Thanks for having me. And I love the conversation. So that's why they last for so long. I always get as much out as I give.
It's amazing. I mean, so look, for those that don't know who Volatus is and what the differentiator is, would you mind giving just a brief rundown of what Volatus does?
So we sell ourselves as an innovative aerial intelligence and logistics company. And we don't use the word drones, although we're viewed as a drone company, largely because we still have 21 piloted aircraft and helicopters alongside of about 90 plus drones, for example. We have about 180 full-time employees. We operate in 4 countries on 3 continents. We started in Canada, but we have operations now across the United States, the United Kingdom, and we're in Norway, which serves the European Union through the European Economic Zone. And we basically have 3 verticals to our business. One of them is our services, where it's basically, call it drones as a service or data as a service. It's kind of the same thing. We have Volatus Drones, which is our solution provider in the United States, based out of Syracuse, New York, in Canada out of Toronto, and in the UK out of Emsworth, which is southwest of London. And then we have our training, Volatus Academy, which is, well, we do some pilot training. The primary training activity there is tactical training for public safety and defense organizations, payload related training, and we're both a geomatics company and a thermographic training and certifying agency as well. So that's the company in a nutshell. And what makes us, I would say, a little bit different is that we very much focus on how we deploy technologies to solve today's problems in sustainable ways, so that the business is long-term recurring revenues, that sort of thing. That's not to say that we don't do R&D. R&D is part of our DNA. We do have an engineering department. We own a fair amount of IP on our balance sheet, but frankly, it's a means to an end rather than an end in itself. We're more interested in customer stickiness, solving real problems, and generating revenue in the process.
And that's something that I was hoping you were going to highlight, because that is exactly what you do. When you've had clients that have come to you with unusual problems, and as opposed to who they were using prior or tried, you actually solved their problems,
Well,
right?
we concentrate. I mean, the beautiful thing about my job is I get to take the credit for a whole bunch of things I don't do. We've got a pretty spectacular team. I'm super proud of the team that we've got. Um, but we have a lot of diverse skills. So Volatus, 50% of Volatus growth roughly comes out of organic sales activity. We have a large sales team. We have a dedicated in-house marketing team, but the other 50% is through mergers and acquisitions. So we've done. Last summer, we finished a merger with a company called Drone Delivery Canada, and that was our 19th acquisition. So we've accumulated a lot of talent, a lot of IP, and a lot of capability.
When you've done these acquisitions, Glenn, and we talked about this before, you use the stock as currency, right? A lot of times.
Yeah, we did. It became more difficult in recent years just because of the status of the market. But as a rule of thumb, we've tried to make sure that because we're retaining leadership for the most part, we've tried to make sure that leaders were incentivized, right? They become my partners. If you look at our C-suite, for example, our chief operating officer is actually one of the founding partners of Drone Delivery Canada. So our C-suite is literally populated with founders,
Right.
and that's been enormously powerful for us. Plus, even when I think of equity holders in the company, um, I'm a large shareholder. I'm one of the original founders, but the reality is we've taken a strategy to make sure that all of our employees. We have an employee stock option program with restricted stock units as well, and those are issued not to me. As a matter of fact, I deliberately abstain from participation in that program, but we make sure that the equity makes it into the hands of our employees. Every full-time employee has the opportunity for equity, and I believe right now almost every employee we have is a shareholder, which aligns the interests of our employees with the interests of our
I,
stakeholders.
I, I love that. I think that every company should do that. I really do. I mean, one of the things that I focus on in our ability to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots is by, I mean, at one time, some of the high tech companies gave all of their employees stock options, right? Gave all of their employees a piece of the company, so that when the company did well, you had janitors that, wound up being millionaires because they had shares of a company. And I think every company should do that with their employees, right? And I love that about you. I love a lot of things about Glen Lynch. I mean, you're a pilot, right? You're our certified pilot. You've
For
been in
about
this
43 years now.
industry for a long
Long
time.
time.
You don't look a day over 50.
Yeah. Whoa, whoa. Yeah. I've been around for a minute, anyways.
No, I mean, look, this is the kind of thing that I love to hear, and this is why Volatus has, look, how long have we known each other now? It's been a while.
That's a few years for sure.
Yeah, right. And from the first time I met you, I mean, I had a feeling Glenn knew what he was doing. It has been definitely a difficult time, right? But I do believe are you excited about where you're at right now?
I have to be honest with you. I think that the way I describe our position today is, it's where opportunity meets preparedness. We've been working our tails off as a company, as a team, trying to build something in a space that means a lot to me. And we're literally right now in the right place at the right time.
All right. And as a matter of fact, I've got the chart up right now. I do need to change something on it though, because the green lines, because of my green screen, are not coming up green, but we'll do this. Do maybe yellow. There we go. Okay. Uh, it's had a very nice run. You had about a 300% move recently, right? Is that a justified move in your opinion?
I believe it is. I think the company has been, even if we just take a comps perspective and we look at our own performance compared to our comparables, you know, Volatus has had revenue growth. We have real recurring revenue. We have improving bottom line performance. We're very, very close to profitability right now. I think in our most recent quarter, we were, you know, under 300,000 negative EBITDA drain, adjusted EBITDA drain. So we're getting very close, making progress on that. Um, and the other thing is that the industry at large has had huge visibility. Unfortunately, we've got, you know, drones playing a big part in multiple theaters of war that are happening around the world, which shines a spotlight on the technology. It also drives a lot more innovation in an industry that was driven by innovation to start with. Um, but and then we have the changing geopolitical situation, which has basically put a lot of emphasis right now on the development of domestic drone industries in the United States and Canada and other nations around the world. That all creates opportunity. And if I'm honest, President Trump and Prime Minister Carney speaking about drones regularly has increased the intensity of that spotlight. But the budgets are there. Our pipeline is more exciting than I've seen, not just in my life at Volatus, but probably in my professional adult life. I've been a business leader for almost 38 years now, and it's right place, right time, and again with a team that's prepared. So I kind of like to think that we're just getting started.
If you were to describe the economic environment over the last 5 years, particularly in terms of getting financing.
Yeah. So small cap companies, you know, markets around the world, particularly in our market in Canada, small cap investors, they went away. There was no interest in backing small cap companies. No matter how hard you performed, it was very, very difficult to raise capital. And of course, as your market cap slides and you know the market declines, and then you get kind of stuck in the mud for a little while, your market cap is, I mean, we were hovering in probably around the $60 million range for quite some time. And the challenge with that is you're really only able to raise a limited amount of capital, and it costs the same money for investors or for banks to raise, you know, 3 million as it does 300 million. So it became almost impossible to raise capital. That's changed of late. Volatus is, you know, we were, I would say, working capital impaired for the best part of about 18 months, where it was extremely difficult. I'm fortunate that we've got an extraordinary CFO that works tirelessly to bridge relationships and communicate effectively with the capital markets community. But as a result of that, we kind of broke through. We did a series of raises, and again, a series because our market cap was low. You can't go out and raise 30 million when you've got a 60 million market cap. Now our market cap has climbed up nicely. We've raised a significant amount of capital for us. We're now well positioned. Our burn rate is low and our cash reserves are fairly high. Our balance sheet is strong. Um, that's another thing that's helped. And that's all helped over the last few months, which is part of what's helped with our stock price. I think investors that were concerned about our runway look at it now and go, okay, that's not a problem anymore. So right place, right time with some dry powder, we're in good shape. So I think but there's an awful lot of companies. Here's the other thing. There's a lot of companies that haven't broken out of that stuck in the mud phase, and that's creating other opportunities for us. While I'm sorry to see good companies with good technology struggling, it also makes consolidation more affordable. So with improving stock prices, some capital reserves, and the price of acquisitions coming down, it creates an opportunity for kind of the next wave of consolidation and growth.
And I think we're going to see some consolidation, right? I mean,
Oh, for sure. But look at one of our peers, somebody I'm quite close of and close to and fond of is Ondas. You know, they're performing extraordinarily. I
I
mean,
was supposed to interview Eric this last week, and of course, the news started hitting the wire, and
yeah,
he got a little busy.
he's gone, you know, from south of 400 million market cap to well north of $1 billion. And honestly, they've started to strategically deploy capital. They've started rolling up strategic acquisitions. It's definitely a company I'd keep an eye on. It's a company I do keep an eye on. Both my
Eric
friend and he's doing a good job.
Eric is a former capital markets guy. This is his game. He
Yep,
understands that game, right?
absolutely. Yep, they're doing some interesting things. I think we're seeing a lot of things that are starting to do well. The geopolitical drive in the United States for America first is unleashing companies like Unusual Machines, developing U.S. based manufacturing to feed the U.S. ecosystem. And again, we've got a lot of the same sorts of things happening in our markets in Canada and the UK
So
and
you're a Canadian company, Glenn. We're still friends, right?
100%. Yeah, good friends, I like to think. Yeah, I actually look at it. I've told you before. Our former prime minister suggested that Donald Trump should be nominated for the Order of Canada, and you know what? The current circumstances change is hard. It's
What is the Order of Canada? What is that? For our view.
that's kind of the highest honor you can have in Canada. And the reason that that's been said is not because he's necessarily popular, that his actions are popular, but what it's done is it's driven a real sense of patriotism with Canadians. It brought us together in a way that America has been experiencing for its entire life, but Canada really hadn't. Canada right now is, the concept of Canada strong is really the America First equivalent, and it's fun to see that we're developing better trade within our country. Instead of having 13 economies, we're working towards a single economy, and I don't see it as combating the enemy. I believe that the current economic turbulence, good things come from change, but change is hard,
Yeah,
right?
changes. Yep.
And I'm glad I'm not the guy driving the change. And I can't say I agree with everything, but I do believe right now that this change has been good for Volatus Aerospace. And I think we very much focus on respecting America first in our American activities run out of Syracuse, New York by our American managing director. But in Canada, it's the same thing, looking in Canada and saying, exactly as the current US administration wants to see more manufacturing in the United States, Canada's taking exactly the same perspective and saying, hey, to be able to support our economy properly, we need more economic and security independence. That doesn't make us a bad partner for the United States. I think it'll make us a better partner in the end. It's just in the meantime, there's an enormous amount of turbulence and frustration and upset
And a
people.
lot of noise. A lot of
Yeah.
noise.
Well, unfortunately, people are paying a price. And hopefully that price is an investment in the future. And I think that that's, as a business, it's my job to make sure that that's the way it's handled for us. The opportunities in the United States are strong. The opportunities in Canada are probably stronger than I've seen. And the opportunities in other parts of the world where they're literally finding themselves, we got Southeast Asian nations that have said, hey, things with the United States can change quickly, things with China can change quickly. We have to balance these macro relationships. But one of the things that we can do to help ourselves is help ourselves develop more of a domestic ecosystem, and that's creating huge opportunities. And of course, America. If I look at America, America wants to build more at home, but they don't want to pay the cost of what it's going to take to onshore that manufacturing. Well, our industry is the solution. And when I say that, I'm talking about automation and robotics, right? I'm in the drone space, but it's part of the greater automation and robotics industry. So we're going to need more automated factories. That exists in the drone industry, but it doesn't exist in the United States on a large scale. We're going to need to really put together the industrial demand with the technology know-how. And I think, you said something earlier in our conversation that I think is very important for businesses like Volatus and others in our space. The tier ones that we've known in the past, the General Dynamics and Lockheed Martins and L3 Harrises and so on, they're still the Goliaths, right? They're the 1,800-pound gorillas. But the truth is, they're going to get a smaller piece to some degree of this pie, and a bigger piece of it is going to go to where the innovation actually exists, which are basically in the smaller industries. And our industry, our passer drone industry, is literally populated by capable technology service providers that are up to the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably one of the most exciting times. So back to that stock chart, do I think it's justified? I do, and I think, while I would have loved to see it stay at its peak, that's not realistic. It shot up there pretty fast, but you can see it's found some support in an area that I think is a new bottom level. I think there's a lot of gas left in the tank right now. We just have to continue to execute.
You actually are in a, I mean, look, this is what you've got that has happened. So you had a long-term trend, which was from the upper left to the lower right, right? You have broken that long-term trend, and that's a very powerful thing when that happens, right? Because it means something of equal or greater force took out that long-term trend, and that's the most dominant trend. So now you've got the stock, which is broken out and it's in consolidation mode. You can see that because it's narrowing down in a pie shape and it's at a level of support. So if you look at fundamentally, what do we have going on out there in the world in the drone and robotic space? I would say fundamentally things are in your favor, right? So
I think there's one other thing, if I can interrupt for a second,
go
Tim.
ahead.
If you scroll that out and show that high left-hand corner, scroll it out far enough that you can see where it was way up there. There's an important thing to note. Remember, I said Volatus is an acquisitive company.
Yeah.
So Volatus went public, and our ticker symbol was VOL. So what you're looking at right now is not the original Volatus Aerospace. We did a merger with Drone Delivery Canada in August of last year. So
Okay.
that's the beginning of the new chart because it was effectively a reverse merger. So the name Drone Delivery Canada changed, but the FLT, the current company as you know it, is the consolidation of what used to be Volatus Aerospace with Drone Delivery Canada. As a matter of fact, the original Drone Delivery Canada was Drone Delivery Canada Corp. If you look at our ticker now, it's Drone Delivery Inc., formerly Drone Delivery, or excuse me, it's Volatus Aerospace Corp. It's now Volatus Aerospace Inc. So really, our stock chart begins in August of last year. Before that, it was a different public
Okay.
company that's no longer publicly traded. We
Okay.
we and that really shows you how significant bringing these companies together actually was. Because what happened is Drone Delivery Canada was a technology company. They're probably operating one of the most advanced remote operations centers, and they've been routinely flying drones beyond visual line of sight, literally a couple of thousand miles away. They've been doing that for years, but they had a small commercial footprint because they were focused on a limited segment and really a technology company. Volatus came in with a commercial muscle. We're an industrial commercial company that had some technology. Bring the two together, unleashes it. So now, when we do large scale oil and gas or power utility contracts, we can operate them from a central operations control center. And we have nationwide approvals in Canada. We're working very hard on expanding the same type of approvals into the United States. The drone dominance initiative in the United States right now is going to accelerate the regulatory environment there. That'll allow us to do a lot of what we're doing in Canada. Canada's regulatory environment evolved a little bit more quickly, but the U.S. has now made a big priority on it. So you know what that means, right? The Formula One car just hit the gas pedal hit the floor. So
Right.
I think we'll see exciting things happen there. And all of these things for Volatus are exciting because we exist literally in 4 countries, including Canada and the United States.
You had an interesting story that hit the press not too long ago elm trees. Is it elm trees? Uh,
Oh, well, there's two that have to do with forestry. One of them was Dutch elm disease.
yes.
Where, yeah, so we it's an award-winning program. A fellow by the name of Matthew Johnson is one of our founding partners, and he's dedicated. He's a dedicated educator. He was rated one of the top agricultural drone professionals in the world a number of years ago. I think top seven. Um, but actually, his primary passion is education. So he developed a program. It's a university style program that's run in high schools. We've done one in Canada. We've got one that we run in Canada. We've run one in Florida. And the one in Canada, for example, trained students on drones, how to assemble them, how to operate them, get licensed, and then how to collect data sets using drones and then use those data sets to inform an algorithm. And what they focused on in Canada was focused on Dutch elm disease. So right now, Dutch elm disease is horrible, right? It destroys forests. And the solution for it is oftentimes cut down the forest and replant. Versus now with this algorithm, municipalities, public works departments can actually have us come in, fly over an urban area and do early detection. So now we prune the trees or prune the forest rather than tearing the forest down. We did a similar project using by the way, SEER, it's called the SEER program, which stands for Science Experiential Aerial Research. We did the same thing in Florida using the chemical properties of paper, tin, and plastics and near infrared imaging to fly along the beaches in Florida and identify where the garbage was accumulating so that instead of having to go out and send crews to clean up the entire beach, they would be able to go and focus on the areas where the garbage actually accumulates. And that was all done by high school students.
It's awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
pretty exciting.
yeah, there's some very cool programs that you have going on there at Volatus. And then you showed me something. This was last week, but you showed me something that I was really blown away with was the helicopter that's like 1,000 pounds.
Yep. Yeah, we relaunched it. So it's 1,000 pound helicopter that basically will carry call it pretty close to 400 pounds, call it 350 pounds to be a little bit conservative, and it'll carry it for 125 miles. So it's right now that has some real potential. More difficult to operate in the United States right now, although that'll catch up. We have approvals to fly it in Canada right now, in places like Africa for doing,
You, I think I gave you a share. Can you pull that thing up real quick? Can you show that?
yeah, it took me a second just to pull it up here, but I can do that for sure. Funny enough, I had it open when we were talking and I closed it. But, yeah, so it's a pretty exciting, it's definitely a pretty exciting platform. This is not the sexiest picture because it's in the middle of the winter, but nonetheless, it'll show everybody what the unit looks like. So this is one of the original products of Drone Delivery Canada.
Yep.
Uh, that aircraft that's not a mock-up. That's actually flying there. It's flying over our test site in that one might be actually flying out in Alberta. We have a facility in Ontario as well. But to give you an idea, that drone when it's sitting on the ground is 7 feet tall. So it's a very, very substantial platform. We see it as being a useful platform for doing things like reforestation, aerial seeding. It can do cargo delivery to remote areas. I mean, it's still a large helicopter. So it's got some regulatory limitations on where it can function. But if you imagine one of the big challenges Canada has right now is wildfires. We're burning, literally millions of acres of forest, and the reforestation over the years has been focused on where we cut the forestry industry and allowing a lot of Mother Nature to clean out forests with wildfires and then allow them to reforest themselves. The problem is right now with global warming and climate change, the fires have become more intense. So they're not just burning the forest, they're incinerating the seed base. So reforestation on that scale is virtually, impossible without the use of technology. So doing large scale aerial seeding is something that we've started focusing on now. Most recently, we announced a partnership with a company in Toronto called Key Reforestation. And we've got some exciting things that we hope are going to happen in that space. But quite capable, because I want you to imagine now the substantial size of hopper and a distribution system that's attached to this, that's flying over areas that otherwise would be dangerous to fly with a single engine helicopter. Remember, forestry, once it burns, that terrain is very harsh. You've got trees that have burned but haven't fallen. You've got very difficult circumstances to be able to get in there and do things manually. So doing it from the air, that makes sense. But again, you're flying single engine aircraft over harsh territories, or you're driving a lot of cost with more expensive two-engine machines. With a drone, what's at risk only is an air vehicle, which is still important, but it's not endangering any human life, and it's reducing the cost dramatically for large scale. It's basically technology solutions for large scale problems.
Right. Glenn, you know, let's touch on a couple of things. Let's touch on the cap table. Let's talk about that for a minute. How many shares outstanding, fully diluted?
A little over 600 million.
Okay, which is a big number, right? But you and I talked before we hopped on, and what I like about you, Glenn, is you're very strategic. You're not you wouldn't uplist to the Nasdaq just to uplist to the Nasdaq, because you recognize that that's not going to solve all the problems, right? As a matter of fact, it could create more problems if it's done at the wrong time, right?
100%.
100%. You want to go there, but you're going to go there when the time is right. Okay?
You got that right. From our perspective, right, the investors have been more favorable on U.S. Big board exchanges than they have been in Canada. Where we are now suits our purposes. It's been able to capitalize our company properly, and of course the bigger challenge is, we get people asking us all the time, well, why aren't you consolidating 10 for 1? You'd have a $5 stock, would be exciting for NASDAQ. Well, that's okay. If the company is moving, if the company moves to a big board, it needs to do it at the right time and for the right reason. I think a lot of CEOs that are probably enjoy the capital market space more than I do it because it's exciting, it has big opportunities, and it's good for your ego. I run a Nasdaq listed company. In my case, my interest is running a company. We didn't take it public. I've never sold a single share. I'm one of the biggest shareholders. So my mission was to have access to capital, be able to use our shares as currency in acquisitions, and basically be in a situation where it was good for the company. It was a tool. At some point, it will likely make sense to do that. It could be sooner, it could be later. There's no way to, first of all, if I did have a plan, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. But secondly, I can tell you that right now, we're in a very good place. So I think the most important thing for us to do is to make sure that we're well aligned so that if and when the time comes, we're able to move quickly. There are benefits to doing cross listings under a multi-jurisdictional disclosure system. But the reality is listing on NASDAQ or New York too soon drives an enormous amount of expense, right? The compliance costs in the US, the D&O insurance is very expensive. And I think right now, we're not in a situation that we need to do it yet. We just simply need to be prepared to do it at the right time. Same is true with consolidating shares. People have said to me, 600 million shares, that's crazy. And my next question is, well, why is it crazy? It's serving us well. When the stock jumped up there recently and we jumped up 300% this year, that was with that kind of a shareholder base. And does it limit certain institutions from us? It has in the past, although I have to tell you, even that seems to be changing. Institutions that are interested in our space are looking at our company
That's
because the
that that's
fundamentals.
so that that's the big key to differentiator right there, is the space itself,
Yep.
right? Space is hot, and this is what I try to tell people all the time. When you look at, it's not just markets, it's also the specific industries that can be in a slump, right?
Yep.
The
Well, and I think,
reverse works as well. When it's hot, and everybody gets hot, right? The old adage, uh, lift all boats, right? Rising
well,
tide
right
lifts
now,
all
that's where
boats.
we are. You know, Ondas doing well. I don't mind talking about Ondas. I think anybody that's interested in the space should be paying attention to them, right?
Yep.
And I think that for example, I feel the same with our stock. I think that anybody that's paying attention to Ondas should be looking at Volatus as well. We're complementary. We're in the same space. We have slightly different focuses, but there's an alignment as an industry, and our entire industry is being buoyed by the geopolitical realities of our world today.
One of the things I happen to love seeing, and Unusual Machines and Ondas just partnered up as
Yep.
well, right? I
Yep.
love what I'm seeing in the drone space. I like the support. I like seeing these companies working together, right?
We're off. You should have seen us on a recent one of the investment banks, Maxim, had a conference recently, and all of the CEOs you're talking about sat on a panel with me. We were all panelists, and what was super exciting about it is we're all feeding off of one another because there's so much opportunity
Right.
right now that what Alan's doing in Florida with the development of manufacturing capacity for parts is very good for what we're trying to do. The same is true with what Eric is doing in Ondas. These are all complementary activities that are happening across our sector. Dragonfly. We've done a couple of projects with Dragonfly, and we're not talking capital markets projects. We're actually talking, commercial industrial type projects where we're leaning on one another's capabilities. I think we're at this fun time where you don't have to hide from competition because there's so much work out there right now that.
There's just not enough players.
And remember something else, right? Many of our customers, if you look at Volatus, our two biggest customer groups are oil and gas and power utilities.
Yep.
So to serve, you're serving massive size companies, and you're a small business. Even Volatus, I mean, we're reasonably big in the drone space. Certainly the biggest in Canada, one of the bigger ones in the drone space from a revenue standpoint, but we're still a small business. So if you're trying to put the resources that are necessary to serve some of the major oil and gas companies, you need to have some depth. And sometimes it's not practical as a small company to have that kind of depth unless you're willing to have massive capital burns. And I'm not. So it works much better to partner with people. And you know what? Sometimes those partnerships lead to things, and you never know where it's going to go, but lots of opportunities. And back to the stock part, right? If we consolidated 10 for 1 right now, we'd have a stock at $5.30, let's say, or 5.40, wherever we are. That's really exciting. Except I've found in my limited experience that stock price has a memory. And what you have to watch is if you're not doing it at a really exciting time where people are going, hey, this is a company to watch, and everything is pointed in the same direction, you run the risk of your $5 stock drifting back to 53 cents again.
Yep.
So for me, it's like we've had good success. We've demonstrated that we can get recognition. What it needs now to continue to that next plateau, because I'm super happy. It seems to have found a good solid footing right now. The next plateau is going to be driven by more successes, and we need to continue to execute on commercial contracts and demonstrate that we continue to do what we say we're going to do, and that'll drive us to the next plateau.
And that's the responsible way to look at uplisting, right? So if you have a very clear line of sight of what your revenue is going to look like, it may still be a little bit lumpy, but it's you have a good, you've got the contract signed, and you know what your revenue is going to look like, because the bottom line is if you go uplist to the NASDAQ and you miss 2 quarters in a row, you're going to get.
Unhappy. Our revenue, for the level that we're at, our revenue is becoming more and more stable because we have, particularly in these large company sectors I've been talking about, they're not lumpy anymore. Those are multi-year contracts, and we get more and more of them, and you get healthy incremental growth with stable customers as long as we do a good job and can continue to serve them well and introduce technology to improve our margins rather than trying to drive prices all the time. And then the second part of that is really the expansion in the defense sector, which we've been in for years. But as a Canadian company, it was not really politically appropriate to talk about, our defense business. And defense business is lumpy, right? You get big orders and you deliver on those orders, and it's exciting. But until you get to be a substantial defense contractor, it's very lumpy. Can be big numbers, but you want to be careful even forecasting those numbers when you're a small company because it can be a big miss. I'd rather have a big win than a big loss, right? So you don't talk about it, but those opportunities are there, and frankly, they're it's now accessible to small business. In the past, if you wanted to sell to the Canadian government, and I'll just use those as an example, you had to sell through a tier one supplier. And so if working with some of these tier ones, well, they're great organizations that, I'm proud to work with many of them. The reality is they're somewhat like dealing with two governments instead of one. And that kills agility. If you look at what's going on in Ukraine right now, the development cycle is 3 months. Somebody has an idea, it's in the battlefield in 3 months. Well, in past days, it took 3 months to decide whether we would think about writing an RFI in a government around, the NATO countries. Now there's agility, right? We've got a problem, we need to solve it quickly. And people are starting to realize that innovation comes from small business. If and the Secretary of War says something in the morning, I wish we had blah. By the end of the day, somebody in their basement has already got a prototype or an idea, right? And that comes out of small business. And I think that governments are now learning how to access the agility of small business. So I think, again, back to bigger piece of the pie goes to smaller businesses.
You just do these layups for me. It's like, it's softball. You know what I mean? That takes us right into AI and how Volatus is using AI to help make those fast decisions. Is AI a part of your?
Huge. So it's always been a part of our technology. Drones, the more autonomous you are, the more machine vision, machine learning, and AI. I use all of them because I would say we're very advanced in the first and developing in the second. I don't know that anybody has the full potential of AI yet. Um, but it's the business practices behind that, the business processes and whatnot. We work very hard right now to make sure that our experienced leadership, we've got a lot of guys that have decades of experience, but the ones that are AI friendly are the ones that are coming out of university today. Um, the leaders with 4 decades of experience, they're looking at that and going, they're thinking it's a Jetsons show or an iRobot type movie. But realistically, what we're doing is realizing that companies and specifically Volatus, AI has to be part of our life.
Yep.
So we drive it in I like to think fun ways into our senior leadership to address everyday problems, not just help us produce a quote, help us do whatever, but to literally look at we're merging companies together. We've got all of these assets. How do we approach it? Sometimes the biggest challenge is coming up with the initial strategy that makes sense.
Yep.
And if you spend the time kind of outlining your circumstance, giving really thorough context, you can actually have tools that are generated in a matter of minutes that can focus your thinking. That's the way I'll say it. It doesn't mean that it gives you the answer. It's not solving your problems, but it's moving you weeks, if not months ahead in your thought process by turning around and saying, here's a series of logical options. This is one that potentially makes the most amount of sense. And then, of course, now you get the really experienced guys in the room going, I really like this, but if we did this and this, and you now start gets even more interesting because we're collaborating with AI that's making sure that we don't get tunnel vision where we're looking at one piece of a bigger problem, but we always maintain the bigger view in sight. I think it's one of the things that I believe will make Volatus even more profitable, more powerful, more agile is going to be making sure that our back office is run as much as possible using AI tools and that we're not depending on building massive workforces to be able to research and so on, but we're really taking experienced, qualified, capable professionals and empowering them with tools that allow them to leverage their own knowledge and move us ahead faster to do what they're capable of doing in a shorter period of time.
Which is the right way to approach it, right? I mean, you can literally ask AI how to use AI to improve your business. I mean, there are, uh, I mean, you gave me several examples, and I was so happy to hear that, but it didn't, I'm not surprised because I know from the very beginning when we first met, I knew this is a guy that knows what he's doing, right? And you had a nice day in the sun. I think you got a bigger day in the sun coming, right? And that's my personal belief. What are you excited about in the next 6 to 12?
So right now, our pipeline is more exciting than it's ever been. There's large, I mean, our analyst, we've got an analyst that covers us, Rob Goff, and he interviewed me one time and he said, "So do you find that you're chasing bigger opportunities?" I said, "Well, to use an analogy, we've been going to work every day with an elephant gun hunting squirrels, right? You're looking for the elephants, but you got to eat, so you're bagging squirrels along the way. The reality is now there are herds of elephants, and all the elephants are fat. So there's these massive opportunities, and like the bigger challenge in business right now is looking at it and saying you start dealing with projects that are the size of a border. Just using that as an example, we're talking thousands of miles,
Yep.
and our technologies as an industry, I'm talking as an industry here at large, are capable of solving large scale problems. And they become very large opportunities that are exponentially larger than many of our companies combined.
Yep.
But so in a case like Volatus, one of the first things that AI helped us understand was, hey, maybe our finance team should be making sure that we've got mechanisms in place so that if we land the whale, we actually have the ability to digest it. And that remember what I said about opportunity meeting preparation,
Yep.
you know, preparing the company to be able to land large contracts. One of the questions I was asked recently is, if you landed a large scale contract, would you have to go out and raise money? And the answer to that is no. We positioned ourselves to be able to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't, because again, the larger you grow, the exciting thing about large scale contracts is large scale reoccurring revenue. The bad things about it is they're oftentimes with government agencies and defense organizations or large scale public, multinational, large scale entities that don't necessarily pay fast.
You
So
know,
working capital.
one of the old sayings, or in the markets, you raise money when you can, not when you need to.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where a lot of small companies get it wrong. They think, I'm going to just take a little bit here, I'm going to take a little bit there. And that's usually when they need it, right?
Actually, you're looking at a guy that made that mistake. Remember I told you, so our revenues grew significantly every single year except last year. Last year they plateaued. They specifically plateaued because our equipment sales were compromised, and equipment sales were compromised because our working capital was limited and equipment sales are low margin.
Yeah.
So while it's an important part of our business, we had to focus on supporting the larger margin contracts. And I had been told before we should have been raising capital earlier. By the time we started working towards raising capital, capital markets was closed for small cap companies. Not a mistake I'll make again. We need to be well capitalized. We're well capitalized. The beautiful thing today is today I don't need capital.
Right.
But any small cap company that says that they're not going to raise capital is probably one you should be running away from, because at some point it'll become a viable. What we don't want is dilution. We don't want unnecessary dilution. The
Right.
one thing that I like to say as a highlight for Volatus is I'm one of the biggest shareholders. So I can't do anything to the stock that doesn't impact me on a scale larger than anybody else. But the beautiful thing is, and if you look at it, I've never sold a single share. Not even when the stock ratcheted up like that, I didn't sell one share. The reality is we're building a company. If we're taking capital, there's a reason we're taking capital. We were slow to do it, and we paid the price last year. We continued. Fortunately, I've got some really smart people working for me that continued to move the company forward. Our bottom line improved. We continued to execute on M&As, but to say that it was an easy year would be a real misleading statement. So we put together the plan. Now we're well capitalized. Now we're empowered for growth again. And the one thing I did learn is exactly what you said. It's not a matter of taking it when you need it. Sometimes it's taking it because you can, and can doesn't mean at any cost. It
No.
means responsible capital, right? You
Uh,
have to deal with it responsibly. We've got probably one of the top CFOs in Canada in the small cap space. I think he's a rising star, period. But he's continuously positioning us for what we might need to do next.
yeah.
And I think we've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but your advice there and taking it when you can, I think that should be drilled into the heads of all of the small cap CEOs.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, you're talking about Abby, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, Abby is a solid guy. You have a very solid team. I've met a lot of your team at the convention here in Vegas, and I mean, you got an impressive team. There's no doubt about that. And I think you have navigated a very challenging. I would say we had a pandemic. We had the worst supply chain issues in the history of mankind. We had the fastest interest rate hike cycle in the history of mankind. We had the capital markets completely just shut down pretty much for small caps. I would say that's a pretty challenging business environment.
Well, it's that old what doesn't kill you thing. And again, I think the biggest secret here is when you've got people, I get an awful lot of credit, right? Being a CEO. Fortunately, there's only one CEO job and I got it. But the reality is the four people that make up our C-suite, every one of those guys can do my job arguably as well or better than I can. And that has made us enormously powerful. I would say it's one of our secret powers. And then the group of leadership coming up that work for that group is equally impressive. So we have a succession plan. If Glenn gets run over by a bus, God forbid, Volatus won't skip a beat. They'll have everybody's going to have a little bit of unhappiness, at least I hope, and then the company will continue on. But largely, I'm not trying to give away the credit because I don't think I'm worthy of credit. They're my team, right? But the reality is I hired a bunch of guys that are more capable and smarter than I am. And half of the trick with those guys is making sure that I can keep up, because they don't ask permission. They know what needs to be done and they do it.
But there's something I know about you, Glenn. I know that you spend a lot of time working on things,
Yep.
a lot of time. And I'm talking like late at night, early in the morning, hours upon hours. I mean, you do your due diligence on a lot of stuff. Yes?
Oh, I like to work, and
Yeah.
I find what we're doing right now is just. Tim, I've been in aerospace for, as I mentioned earlier, I've been a pilot for 43 years.
Yeah.
And while I love the industry that I've been in, I don't think I've ever been more excited than I am right now. And as a matter of fact, it's interesting. Some of Volatus investors are my peers from the business jet and airline world, and guys that are running those kind of companies that were my peers in my previous life. And it's just an exciting space and an exciting time.
And it's not going to change. It's not going to change. It's this genie is not going back in that bottle. I mean, this
Well,
this thing is out.
I think we've got several years ahead of us that are going to be exciting, and I think each year is going to build on the other one. The geopolitical situation right now has created massive opportunities, right? And in the end, I think they're going to be good for our industry, and I think they'll be good for the globe. I
I
think.
absolutely agree with you, 1,000%. Glenn, I want to thank you for taking 3 hours out of your Sunday to hang out with me and give everybody an update. But look, I mean, here's the deal, everybody. If you weren't familiar with Volatus, then you should get familiar with Volatus. You should put them on your radar. And I can say this is my new thing, Glenn. Actually, our mutual friend Alan Evans actually actually gave me this beautiful thing. He said the first time I interviewed him, he said, "Look," and I think his stock was trading at about, I want to say $1.30, $1.50, somewhere in that area. He said, "Look, just buy one share.
Yep.
And I thought that was probably one of the smartest things I've ever heard somebody say, because one share is not going to kill you, right? It was $1.30. You got 80 million people though that buy one share, and you only have 50 million shares outstanding. That's pretty big deal, right?
100%.
But what it really is that by having a piece, you pay attention to what's happening with the company, right? That's because you own it. You own a piece of it. Now, you may regret that you only own one share, but at least you're participating if the stock does take off.
100%.
No pun intended with the takeoff thing. TAKOF.
Thank you for that, by the way.
I would go to Volatus, go to their investor relations page, sign up for their email alerts, and maybe, right here at this place where it's consolidating at 39 cents, maybe you're looking to buy it, maybe not one share, maybe you buy 10 shares, right? I mean, and start paying attention, because the space is hot. You have some other new things that you're going to be revealing sometime soon, right? Some
Well,
technology.
we're working hard. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. All right. Glenn, thank you so much for coming in and doing this. And when are we going to follow up? Because it's not going to be the length of duration that we've had in between this last one.
I would say within the next 60 days, we should do another one.
Okay. That's what we will do. All right. Glen Lynch, TAKOF. Check it out. Hold on one second, Glenn. I'm going to turn this off.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Glen Lynch from Volatus Aerospace. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.